How's it going, guys? Welcome back to a new video. So in today's video, I want to break down the process of this illustration. So this painting in particular is one of my favorites that I've done recently, just because it's so simple. So I was experimenting with a different style and I wanted to see how far I can simplify my existing style. It was kind of a challenge, but I'm very proud of it and I do like this illustration. And as I said, it's one of my favorites. And so I just want to show you how I created it and maybe inspire you guys to try out something similar. And so the plan for this video is that I'm going to turn off all of the layers that I created for this illustration. And then I'm going to make them visible and kind of explain each step that I took for each layer. And I think this is a very good way for you to kind of get an insight into my process and also for you to understand my process and my workflow. So I would say without further ado, let's just jump right into it and I'll just explain my entire process. And as I said, hopefully by the end of this video, you will feel inspired to try this out on your own. So yeah, let's just jump right into it. So as I said, I'm going to turn off all of the layers first and just show you my initial sketch. So this was the rough draft. This was my original sketch. And so you can see that it's very loose. It's very rough. And it doesn't even look that good, to be honest. But as I said, I wanted to simplify it as much as possible. So I wanted to simplify the entire process and make it as easy as possible. And the goal of every sketch that I do is to reach a point where I feel comfortable moving on to coloring. And so the next thing I did is I duplicated this sketch. So I simply just duplicated the layer and I changed the color to red. And the reason why I do this is because let's say you're painting skin, and skin naturally has an orange or reddish type of hue to it. And if you have a sketch that has black lines, it's going to be very difficult, or not very difficult, but it's going to make it more difficult to make those lines blend into the skin color. But if you have a red sketch, it's going to blend in more easily and you don't have to do as much work. So this is just something that I picked up over the years. It really makes the entire process of painting much easier, especially if you're going much further with your painting. If you're trying to make it look even more realistic and softer, then it really helps if your sketch is kind of in a similar hue as your final painting. So I changed the color to red, and this is very easily done. So I'm just going to quickly show it to you, but keep in mind that I was using Clip Studio Paint. So if you're using Procreate or Photoshop, it may be a little bit different, but it should be very similar. So the way to turn your sketch into a different color is like this. So let's just go back to the original sketch, the black sketch, and let's just duplicate the layer. And so the way to change the color, it involves 3 steps. You have to go to Edit, then to Tonal Correction, then you need to select Brightness and Contrast. And so you want to make the sketch just a little bit brighter than it is. And this step is crucial. If you don't do this, it's not going to work. So you want to make the sketch a little bit brighter, and then you want to hit OK. Then you want to go back to Edit, Tonal Correction again, and this time you want to click on Color Balance, and you want to slide where it says red. You want to slide it all the way to the right side to red, and you want to hit OK again. And this time you want to go back to Edit one more time, Tonal Correction, and then go to Hue, Saturation, Luminosity. You want to slide the saturation slider all the way to the right and then slide the luminosity a little bit to the right to make it pop a little bit more, to bring out the saturation of the red. And then you want to hit OK. And this is basically how you change the color of your layer. And you can change it to any type of color from here, but red is usually a very good color to start painting skin, especially because, as I said, skin has a orange type of hue to it naturally. So it makes sense to have a similar tone for your sketch. So another thing that I've done, and this is also very important, I changed the layer mode to multiply. And the reason why I changed it to multiply is because the sketch is going to be on top of my colors for a very long time while I'm painting. In this specific case, for this specific illustration, it stays there all the time. So I never paint on top of my sketch. So I need to make sure that the sketch is somehow interacting with the colors underneath it. So the way to change it to multiply is very easy. So there's a drop down right here, and usually it says normal. This is the normal layer mode that your layer is going to be in. And you want to click on the drop down menu and you want to select multiply. So now everything that is below your sketch is going to have an effect on the sketch itself. It's kind of difficult to explain, but just try it out and you'll see the difference. So anyway, so moving on from here, I'm going to show you how I started to color this piece and just explain each step separately and individually. And one thing that is very important to me personally is that the way I create my workflow is that everything is repeatable. And that's why whenever I paint a new illustration, it's almost going to be the exact same workflow than the previous illustration, just because it's almost kind of like a blueprint. It makes the entire process much easier because I have a plan in mind before I even start. And you'll notice, and that's why I say, if you're watching tutorials, not just mine, any tutorial out there, then make sure to kind of follow along. It doesn't help to only watch the video. Pick up a pencil, pick up your tablet, and just kind of try out the different techniques and see if anything kind of works for you. And if something works for you, then stick with it. And if not, then just move along. So anyway, so the first color layer that I created is called background. And so basically what I've done here is I just filled the background with the colors that I needed. So for example, for the walls, I kind of have a beige kind of color tone. And for the bathroom doors, I have a lighter beige, almost cream colored. And so this is a very loose approach to it. And you can see I don't even care about it being like perfectly clean or anything. The entire sketch is very rough and it doesn't look nice looking at it because it's so loose and you can still see all of the sketchiness. You can even see some of my mistakes. But I wanted to keep that on purpose to kind of have that raw look, you know, that unfinished look. So once we have the background established, which was very easy to do because as I said, I didn't care about any details. I just moved on. And the next thing that I filled in was the skin or the base of my subject. And also I added some hints of pink, but overall it's just a base color for her skin. And the way I pick skin colors is I pick a midtone. So there are 3 different methods you can take here. So you can either start very light. You can start with a midtone, which is what I'm doing. Or you can start with a darker tone. So let's say you're starting out with a very bright tone for her skin. So because you're working from light to dark, this time you have to darken the values to add form to your subject. And the way to do this is because you're working from the lightest value up to the darker values, you have to pick a darker value to add form to your drawing. And then go darker as you move along. And with the darkest value, you have to work to the lighter values. So what you would do is, again, if we move to the darkest value on the right side, you would add the lighter values and go from there to build form. But to me, because I want that flexibility, I start with a midtone because this allows me to add lighter tones and darker tones to my subject. And so this allows me to, as I said, go both ways. And basically when I'm painting, I can add shadows to my subject and I can add highlights. But if you're starting with the lightest tone, you can only add shadows to it. And if you're starting out with the darkest tone, you can only add highlights to it. So if you're not experienced and you still have the option to go any way with this because you're not used to any specific technique or any specific method, then I would advise you guys to start with a midtone because, as I said, it allows you to kind of be more flexible. So once we have this established, I move along and just give all of the other objects in the picture a flat color. So for example, her phone gets a flat color, then her jacket, and I added some very rough shading to her jacket already. It doesn't even make that much sense, but I just wanted to give it some volume. Then we have the accessories. So for example, we have a watch and some bracelet, her hair, then her hat, And I guess that's it. So we also have the mirror border down here. So if I just zoom out, that's the mirror border. So up until this point, I didn't actually paint that much. What I've done is I created a very simple sketch, and then I gave each individual object that is in my picture a separate color. So I didn't do much painting at all. I just gave each object its own color. And from here, I wanted to add some volume to the painting because I felt it was a little bit too flat. So the problem is, if any of your paintings ever look flat, they also seem a little bit lifeless. So you need to add something to it to make it pop. So the first thing that I did is I gave the hair some volume by adding some shadows to it. So if I just turn off and on this layer, you can see by adding shadows to her hair, it kind of makes it pop, and it also gives it some volume and more definition. So just again, off, on, off, on. And it's a very simple step because you can see it's only a few brush strokes, but it changes so much. The last step, basically, or one of the last steps, is adding a little bit of volume to her face and her skin mainly. Because at this point, I was kind of happy with it, but I felt that something was missing. So I wanted to add one more layer that would just kind of bring it all together, which is this layer right here, which is my final layer of shading. This just brings it all together. So you can see I added very minimal shading to her face, a little bit of detail to the phone. So if I just turn it off and on, you can see that I've added some highlights to the phone, some highlights to her jewelry, and that's basically it. But it does change a lot. Even though it's not a lot of work, this probably took me like 5 to 10 minutes, but it really makes the entire image pop a little bit more, and it brings the main subject a little bit more into focus. And then lastly, just to kind of add some life to her face, I added some highlights to her eyes, and that's basically it. So highlights in the eyes are kind of like the cherry on top, you know, like the icing on the cake. Highlights can really make something pop and really stand out from the rest. So you need to be careful not to make them too bright unless you really want everybody to focus on that specific part of your illustration. So if we just go back to the sketch, it looks like a total mess. But going from here, because we do have enough information basically to go and paint from here. And I could actually take it much further than I took it, but I intentionally tried to keep it as simple as possible. But you can see how I took this very simple sketch, and then just by adding some color to it, it gradually turned into this much more defined piece. So just running through all of the colors again, you can see we're starting very simple. Everybody can do this. Like, I have no doubt that you guys cannot do this. So it's very easy. And then just gradually, we're building this. And before you know it, you have a final illustration. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching my videos. Thanks for being subscribers to my channel. If you're not a subscriber, then it would mean a lot to me if you would subscribe. I hope to see you in my next video. And as always, guys, I love you with all my heart and soul. Peace.